Greetings, Wall Street Wire news readers. Dave here. I want to thank you so much for joining me today as we're counting down the top 10 stories on WallStreetWireNews.com. Not chosen by me, but chosen by all of you. These are the most clicked, most read stories of the year on our site. And I do want to take just a second to thank you so much for being loyal readers, loyal listeners. And if you haven't already, please go to WallStreetWireNews.com to sign up for our free e-letter where you can get today's market in minutes. As we're counting down 2020. We're going to take 2020 and we're going to just toss it into the trash bin. Actually, I don't have a waste basket behind me, but maybe that could be part of my new trick. So let's get into it, all of us, as we're looking forward to 2021. I hope you're all healthy and wealthy in 2020. I certainly hope you were able to stay safe, and of course that you hope your portfolios did well in 2020. It was a very rough early beginning in the stock market in the earlier part of the year, but now we're back to all-time highs. So I hope you were able to get some of that cash back as we're looking ahead to 2021. So let's get to our top 10 stories. FDA approves coronavirus at-home test kit. What took so long? The story comes from November 19th, just a few weeks ago, as we got Lucria Health has got a new at-home test kit, and as it mentions here, it's good to be able to do this thing on your own without, if you really don't want to venture outside, or if you live in a certain place where you really can't go outside, going to like a Walgreens or a CVS or any kind of any other health place where you go, walk-in clinic or something like that. In fact, my wife just took a drive-through COVID test. Thankfully, it came back negative. She ventured out to a Walgreens. And I think, honestly, this one is good, but it's $50 a pop for a test, and it takes 30 minutes to get a result, which is certainly very rapid. But I don't think we're quite there yet with testing. I think we need something that's a little bit cheaper and get a result a little bit faster. And certainly, if we're talking about maybe be able to have large gatherings, be able to get into a restaurant. You imagine if, say, they were using this test kit at a restaurant, certainly not at $50 a pop. That'd be quite expensive. But if you get it down to maybe $5, something like that, and maybe 10 minutes. That would be a real game changer. But I think we're all looking for some positive testing news. This was it. And though it took so long, we're just not quite there yet. But it was a positive step in the development of testing, and certainly at home testing. If you are kind of locked inside and don't want to venture out, particularly if you're not feeling well and you're quarantined, you really don't want to be going out. So this was the beginning. I think the beginning of a path to a better path that we can get to in terms of testing. We need many tests. You sort of need to be like some of the major sports leagues who are testing every single day. And we're not quite there yet to be able to open everything up, I guess, if the standard is just all negative tests. But that was number 10. Our next story. Adapt or die. IBM makes big move to keep pace with the digital movement. This comes from October 8th. And what it mentioned here is that IBM is basically kind of falling behind in the technology space. So they split up one company to focus exclusively on cloud computing. And as mentioned here in the article, in the tech and IT space, it's not quite as clear cut and dry, but we've seen like companies like NVIDIA absolutely take off to the tune of 130% stock gains. Meanwhile, IBM, that juggernaut, they kind of looking like a business of the past. And so they're playing catch up here. And you can look at it, pull up her stock price here all the way back to 2016, really just peaking in 2017. And if I go even farther back, really, they didn't really peak. Looking here at 2012 and down and down and down again. So a shakeup was absolutely necessary. All right, next up. This comes from November 5th. What does the election mean for new stimulus checks? Well, I guess we got our answer already, but certainly many of you were interested in what was going to happen with the new stimulus checks, and we got, well, half the amount that we got from the first round of stimulus, going down from $1,200 checks per person to just $600 per person. And of course, that whole kerfuffle with President Trump wanting his $2,000, it doesn't look like that's going to happen, as it's going to stall in the Senate. But those checks are rolling out as we speak now, so you may, if you are eligible to receive them, you may have already received them or will receive them shortly. So yeah, stimulus checks was on everyone's mind. Of course, the markets were waiting for this. The markets were like, okay, we've got some optimism here. They'd pop, and then some pessimism, and they go down. But we finally got that sorted out. Next up. So how do we power the new revolution in electronic vehicles? This one comes from December 3rd, and it brings up this past summer, House Democrats revealed a plan to cut 90% of U.S. greenhouse emissions by 2050, which will mandate zero-emission cars by 2035 and decarbonizing the power grid by 2040. Very, very ambitious, my friends. Why? Because we don't have the electricity to power all these vehicles. We don't have all the charging stations, and just beyond that, we need to generate a lot of power just to do all this stuff. It's going to mean ramping up our power availability, and as many of you know, renewables are not as efficient as fossil fuels, burning coal, natural gas, that sort of a thing, and nuclear has been just sort of out the window as an option. And you could take a look at, say, a state like California, as we mentioned here, as they've had having brownouts constantly, and then certainly the threat of wildfires. But yeah, California, I mean, you're living in one of the greatest places on earth, and you don't have reliable power. That's a problem. And if we're going to be mandating these electric vehicles, you need charging stations and reliable power. Could you imagine that disaster if we're all sitting there in our electric vehicles and have no way to charge them? Goodness gracious. Next up, Pfizer BioNTech sparked long-awaited hope for a vaccine with a major development November 9th. And we kind of know what happened here, but we were all interested, waiting on a vaccine, because we figured, this is the chance that we can get widespread vaccine, again, similar to the testing, but even more so, that we can start opening up our economy. Now, in terms of, it's interesting here, of course, we have the approval for this vaccine, and now we'll be ready for widespread use. And I think we're up around, 2 million doses administered, something like that. And those companies are ramping up production. But if you look at this is sort of the comedy of the market just a little bit. Look, a big pop here for Pfizer, and then kind of back down. BioNTech, a big pop right there in early to mid-December, and then down. And it does show, at least to me, shows to me how difficult it can be to time the market, to chase the market, to be able to get there on time. Because, sure, Pfizer should do well, but a lot of this stuff does run on the news. And now, even though the more vaccines are rolling out, for both companies, you might assume that it might continue to go up. But it remains to be seen what's going to happen. It's just going to be, was that it? Was that the run? Did we miss it? Who knows? Such is the market. Next up, Ford flexing a little muscle to outshine Tesla. And this goes from Ford's new electric vehicle, Mustang electric vehicle, trying to compete with Tesla. And a comment here, typical buyers, 99% of the people who don't buy electric vehicles today. So that's who Ford's going after. They're not going after the Tesla buyer. They're going after sort of the regular guy who would not consider an EV, but they might be swayed to get this, maybe because it's a brand they trust, like Ford. Mustang is certainly a classic car. Our job at Ford, what we do is to bring cars to the majority. And so this one's to bring people into electric cars and see what they can do. And we close here with the final line. This begs the question, if you're on the fence about jumping into an EV, does this new Mustang push you over? I'd like to know what you think about that. I'll tell you what I think. Look at that car. This thing is gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. To me, it's better looking than a Tesla. It has that nice Mustang badge. I've never owned a Mustang, but I might be interested in this car. Of course, as we mentioned earlier, there's the pitfall of finding enough charging stations, and if there's enough power, you have to at home you have to get a special hookup to be able to charge it, and of course that means a higher electricity bill. But at first glance, this thing is an absolute beast and a beautiful car. At $42,000, is that enough to get you to move the needle? Good question there. All right, let's get to our next story. Pfizer, another Pfizer story. You guys love Pfizer, don't you? Pfizer rises after CEO says COVID-19 vaccine could be ready next month. This comes from October 19th. And then here we are. It was about, it was maybe December 4th, somewhere around there, earlier in this month, where we finally got approval for widespread use. And we certainly know the story around that. We just recently covered it. Next story, a revolution in tech is upon us, and we're not even talking about the FANG, if that's how you pronounce it, stocks. And I think this article is important, and I could see why many of you were so interested in this, because as we open here in the article, as technology sector has enjoyed a historic year, the popular names like Facebook, Amazon, and Apple, Microsoft, and Google have dominated headlines for a number of reasons. Of course, these are big companies, high earners. All of their stock, the share prices have gone up. Certainly Amazon, my goodness, Apple, wow. But there's another corner of the tech industry that deserves your attention because there's a big revolution underway. For seemingly decades, Intel has dominated the server and data center world, but recently names like AMD and NVIDIA have not only crashed the party, but they're threatening to take a legitimate bite out of Intel's long-held 94% market share. And you can see it. Look at this. This is AMD over the past year. You do want to pay attention to companies like this. It's not just Facebook. It's not just Amazon, not just Google. Look at NVIDIA over the past year. You can see here. Absolutely exploding. So I do think it's important if you're an investor to maybe look at, not necessarily these are alternatives, but these things may be under your radar. And all right, let's move to our second to last story. Biogen soars with positive news on Alzheimer drug. And I like this story. And it's very promising here for Alzheimer's. When everything has been so COVID focused, all of our minds on COVID. And as we see, the number of stories here in the top 10, at least 3 or 4 of them, testing, vaccine. But we get this little bit of something else for a more a long-standing problem like Alzheimer's. It's an absolutely devastating disease, and to be getting positive news on that horrible disease, to be able to sort of mitigate the symptoms, and maybe a cure, maybe on our way to a cure for Alzheimer's. That is certainly positive news. And what did Biogen do? Look at this, and again, showing the pitfalls of trading just a little bit. Here's Biogen. There's the spike basically on the news, and then back down. Now, it's not everything is about trading. And if this treatment is successful, that's a great thing for all of us. But it does show a massive pop from about 250 to 360, 250 to 350 rather, in one day or so. And now it's back down to trading at 242 before the news of this positive development for an Alzheimer drug. It just kind of makes you laugh a little bit, trying to beat the market. It's a difficult one. All right, our final story, the most read story on WallStreetWireNews.com of 2020. It may be no surprise to you, but here it is. With the biggest detractors now eating crow, Bitcoin could be starting a monetary revolution. As we wrote about over the past couple of days, how Bitcoin has absolutely been exploding. This story comes from November 30th, and it just shows you how massive Bitcoin's run has been just over the last couple of weeks. And look at this prediction. It's around here. Oh, yeah. Antony Trechev, managing partner for co-founder of Nexo, which bills itself as the world's biggest crypto lender, says he expects Bitcoin to rally well into the 20,000s and beyond. Yeah, we are there. Where are we here? Here's Bitcoin knocking on 30. This is Bitcoin over the last year, knocking on $30,000 per Bitcoin. Absolutely nuts run. Now, I own a little bit of Bitcoin, but I wish I owned a little bit more. And as this goes, now, some people, the question is whether or not Bitcoin can become a currency. That debate is certainly worthy to be had. I don't think it's going to be. And if you talk to Rodney Johnson, he does not believe it could be a currency. One, it's just far too volatile. We expect our dollars to lose their value over time, but we don't expect them to wildly fluctuate day to day. You're out there maybe to buy your maybe $100 worth of groceries, and now you got to shell over basically what now is $150 worth of groceries, or you can go back and get a great bargain, and your groceries get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. That's not a bad deal, but then people will hoard it and not want to trade it. However, as a store of value, as the new digital gold, as many people have called it, I think it absolutely has a great chance, if not it already has overtaken gold. Now, where will Bitcoin go? Some people say to zero, of course, but a lot of people say we have no idea, and this thing can go, 100,000, 200,000, a million? Nobody knows, and that's why people keep buying it. So for now, I mean, I do expect a pullback as we're hitting, I would say to expect a pullback as we're nearing 30,000, maybe as we get into the early part of the year. And we wrote about that on WallStreetWireNews.com that there, it's always been a bumpy ride. And we had that massive run just a couple of years ago up to 20,000, and then it was down for a long time. But here we are at all-time highs in Bitcoin. So this is a fun, Bitcoin is a bit of a fun ride and a very interesting topic, as shown by being the most read story on WallStreetWireNews.com. Well, that wraps up our top 10 stories of the year. I hope, again, as we go into 2021, that you remain healthy and wealthy. Again, we want you to head on over to WallStreetWireNews.com. Please sign up for our free e-letter where you can get today's market in minutes. If you're watching this video on YouTube, we'd be honored if you would subscribe to our channel, hit the like button. If you happen to be watching this on Facebook, please share this video with your friends and hit the thumbs up button. Well, that's it for 2020. We hope to see you again in the new year. Thanks for watching.